and interact with this here. Um, hey, Saya, and interact with this here. What's that called? Algorithm. Because then that's all I need. I love coming here. I love teaching. So hashtag live, hashtag replay, and engage. That's all I ask. But anyways, today we're going to talk about leadership isolation. Yesterday we talked about confusion when it comes to cash flow, but I want to touch base on something that's really important to get to the bottom of because I'm meeting too many founders and nonprofit executives that that are very well isolated where they feel like they're doing the work on their own and they're not able to get the support that they need from the leadership in the organization that is supposed to be supporting them and helping them scale and grow the organization so they can increase their impact. So what I'm like with leadership isolation, I want to say that nonprofit leaders aren't just overwhelmed when we think about it. They're lonely. Just like entrepreneurship can be very lonely, leading a nonprofit can be very lonely as well because what it's doing when they are experiencing that loneliness, it's costing them impact, right? Um, but before I get deeper into this, my name is Stacy. I'm a nonprofit consultant and I help small to mid-sized nonprofits increase their impact and revenue generation potential in 6 months through strategic planning and capacity building. So if you're interested in learning more about how I help my clients, definitely check out my Stand store and help me out by commenting. I see Joyce. Hey, Joyce, happy Thursday to you as well. I think that's what it says, but let me put my glasses on. Yes, happy Thursday to you too, Joyce. So definitely let's get started. So a lot of people won't admit when it comes to nonprofit organization, but being a nonprofit leader can be very isolating and it costs a lot, right? Like you're doing so much in the organization, right? You're the janitor, you're doing everything that needs to be done. You're raising funds, you're trying to implement the programs, you're having conversations, you're doing everything except for the work that you need to do for the organization to actually get to the next step, right? Decision maker and keeping the mission alive, all these things, right? And you're the person that people are coming to with problems. But my question for you is who do you go to as a leader? Because that's a question a lot of people don't answer for themselves. And I want to challenge you to realize that as a nonprofit leader, you need to fill your cup as well and realize that leadership is something that you need to keep cultivating and also understand that being able to be at a different level will help you take your organization to the next level, right? If you're leading a small to mid-sized nonprofits and feel like no one truly understands the weight of your role, then today's conversation is for you because we're going to talk about why that is and what needs to occur because it's not only about how you're feeling and how you feel about the work that you do because yes, it can feel fulfilling because a lot of times we love that feeling, oh, I did a lot today, but did you do what you needed for the mission to move forward, right? This is going to be about the survival of your organization. So one thing, leadership isolation, it's not just emotional, it can be very operational and it affects the way that your nonprofit is moving forward. Joyce said, I have mentors and even accountability partners. That helps a lot. Joyce, kudos on that. Because then not many leaders or a lot of like true leaders, I think the word leader is being thrown around in a way that doesn't make sense. Just because you have a title does not mean you're a great leader. Okay, so let's just say that right there. A lot of executives in the nonprofit industry need that level of support and somebody to guide them, to coach them, to lead them to become a better version of what's needed to move the organization to the next level. And according to a study by Board Source, 49% of executive director actually report feeling unprepared to lead in critical strategy conversations, mostly because they don't have access to trusted peers or mentors. Because let's think about it, a lot of executive directors that go into the role, let's say your organization has an opening, they get hired, and chances are they got hired and the salary was really low because the organization needed a body to fill that role, right? And that person doesn't know what they're doing, and they're unprepared to lead, and the organization is not providing any type of capacity building or skills or knowledge, training for this person to develop and take the organization to the next level. Now, caveat, that's why I love capacity building. A lot of organizations don't realize you need to invest in the people that work in your organization if you want the organization to move past that. So, but that's not neither here or there, but I just wanted to put that. Now, there's another survey, Nonprofit Leadership Alliance, right? They found that more than 70% of nonprofit leaders say they experience decision fatigue weekly. Now, I don't know about you, like, you have to make a decision almost every day if you're leading an organization, a business, or whatever, right? Now, decision fatigue is not something you want to experience, and 43% of them said they felt unsupported by their boards. Now, how many of you feel like you have a board that looks pretty? Like on paper, they look pretty, right? That's all it is. They're just there to look pretty. Like we have a doctor here, we have a director here, we have this person here that they serve on a committee for the local city government or whatever, right? You have a board that looks pretty, but when all is said and is done, they don't support the mission financially. They don't support the mission work-wise. There's nothing really happening. So 43 of them, 43% of the nonprofit leaders actually say they feel unsupported by their boards. That is not a good problem to have, y'all. Like, I don't know like what else to tell you. That's why like one of the services I offered to one of my clients, I think this was in September, it was a board training, right? Putting together a board training and making sure that there were accountability systems in place for everybody on the board to understand their roles. Because oftentimes it's not the board, it's really how the leadership is making sure that the board understands their role. They need to understand their role and make sure that they stay accountable for what they signed up for. Because then one thing in this board training that happened, and that happened with a former client of mine, everybody had to sign an acknowledgement form, and everybody had to understand, like, and everybody had to acknowledge, sign this form and return it by the end of the training. Like, read it, and we went over it in the training for everybody to understand, okay, this is our responsibility. It was on the acknowledgement for everybody. It had their roles on there, right? This is our responsibility. This is what we're supposed to do. And this is who we report to. This is how many times we have to check in to report our progress and things like that. It needs to be clear and concise. Because then if you have people on a board and you just expect them to work, but you set no expectation, I will say this flatly and have no regret telling you, but it's your fault. Okay. If you have a board, you have not trained them not one time about what you expect, what the expectations are, what the repercussions are. Because if your bylaws, they do not say what happens if somebody does not show up to meeting, does not contribute to the organization or the mission, right? None of that is happening on the bylaws, right? That's your fault. You should make sure that your bylaws reflect what happens when somebody is not supporting and not carrying their weight, because you need to ensure that the bylaws support the progress of the organization, not just supports like it's not just compliant because you need bylaws to file paperwork. No, your bylaws are the documentation, the governing documentation that's going to help you keep things going. So you need to look at the board, yes, but you need to look at how you as the leader made sure that the board knew what their role, like what each of their roles were. Because if they don't know what their roles are and they have no accountability check system, nothing going on, what do you expect them to do? You mean to tell me I have to go to one meeting a month, right? And all I got to do is show up and say, I'm gonna go. But then you make no demands. It's just there. This is what we want to accomplish by the end of the year. But you're not asking me anything. If you do not ask, it will not happen. And if you do not follow up, it will not happen. Just like I tell my clients, you need to make the ask and start asking sponsors to support. If you don't hear back, you better pick up the phone and call them back because people have lives. People have lives. I want you to remember that. Just like some people, like I will message them, they won't answer, I'll follow up. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. We had a death in the family. You never know. You do not know what people are going through in their personal lives. Just because it was a communication you made that was like professional does not mean they do not have personal lives. So the power of follow up and making sure you follow through with individuals even on your board is very important. Set clear expectation, make sure it is communicated verbally and in writing, and also follow up with that person. Just because that person said they will do something does not mean you cannot follow up also to ensure that it was done. Now, why do you need to follow up if it was done? Because you are a grown person, they're a grown person, right? Because it helps you. It helps you. Because then if all you're gonna do is say, I'm gonna do it myself because I know how to do it, I don't want to wait on people to do anything, then at the end of the day, you are causing your own downfall. Because I hear too many people, oh, I know how to do it. I don't want to wait for people to do it. It's just frustrating. Yes, I hear that. Like, trust me, coming from someone who is very type A, right? I don't even like to ask people for, I don't like asking people for help, but I understand the power of delegation. Like you're talking to a woman that took a king size mattress up the stairs by herself and almost died, okay? Because I refused to ask for help. So when I tell you, if you are leading a nonprofit, the best way to save yourself from burnout and actually go further faster is making sure that you collaborate, right? You delegate and make sure that your board is on board with what's happening. Like, sorry for that, but yes, your board needs to be on board with what's happening to make sure that everybody puts their head together and work together. Now, if you have a board that only consists of your family members, that's on you. You need to start looking for professionals that are really interested in making sure that your organization is going in the right direction. Because like even with grant applications, now one thing that they will look at, and I'm going to give you this example to make sure that you're working on it, not because of a grant, but because it makes sense. Oftentimes, grant reviewers will look for if your organization has more than family members on the board, if there are too many family members on the board, what the board looks like, you know, who they represent, what their role is on there, because sometimes people put folks on the board that have no relation or no connection with the audience that you're serving. You mean to tell me your organization is serving children with autism, but nobody on that board has personal experience with autism? How are they going to understand the population you're serving? At least make sure that somebody on the board has an understanding of what that is, right? I could not be on a board for children with autism because I do not have a personal relationship or personal experience with it. And I will be very honest with it. I do not, but I know mothers that do, right? I know other parents that do. Now, so you need to think about who it is you're trying to serve and who the best fit for the role is. And that's where you as a leader need to start becoming better at building relationships. Because when you start building relationships and you start meeting people in the community, you have a better idea of what it is that you need to be doing, because putting mom and pop on the board is not it. Okay, it is not it. So to continue on talking about like some of the stats that I shared earlier from BoardSource and Nonprofit Leadership Alliance, right? About executive directors feeling unprepared. Now, we already know that a lot of EDs feel unprepared, and 70% of leaders say they experience decision fatigue on a weekly basis. And 43% of those EDs or these leaders say they feel unsupported by their boards, which is mind blowing, right? So when you think about it, that's nearly half of nonprofit leaders walking around in silence, holding stress, doubt, and pressure with really no outlet. And the worst part is this silence is going to trickle down. Now, what happens with this silence? It starts impacting your team, because let's be honest, when you start going through these difficult times and these like having the stress, doubt, and pressure on you, it will impact your team. Because first of all, I don't know about you, some of us, when we have all of this weight on our shoulders, we tend to not lead clearly because we are mentally foggy and we tend to take our frustrations out in ways that we don't even recognize, okay? It's going to slow down your fundraising because fear is going to lead to indecision. Because when all of these things are happening, all of this stress is happening, that fear that you're feeling because you're like afraid of what's going to happen or who's going to help you, it's going to cause a lot of issues and it's going to slow your fundraising down. And the next thing I want you to think about, it also keeps your nonprofit playing small because you don't have anyone challenging you to think bigger. And like I literally had a client 2 weeks ago, I had to challenge him to think bigger in terms of how much money he could raise in a month because of the relationships he had sitting right there. He had the relationships, but he was afraid to have conversations and make the ask. You're sitting on potentially $25,000 that you could raise in a month, but you're not because you're afraid of asking. So sometimes you will need to challenge yourself or be in rooms where people challenge you to think bigger. Because if you are sitting in the same rooms of the same individuals that are going to tell you everything you do is right, you surrounded by yes man. Okay, yes men, yes women. If you're surrounded by yes men and yes women, I will not go to my mom and ask her for advice, not because I don't love my mom, but because I know, first of all, she's gonna ask me to find a second and third job to make that money I'm trying to make. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I am creative enough that I can make that money in a week if I want to. So you cannot surround yourself with people that are thinking of things that don't work. Okay. You need to surround yourself with people that think bigger and can take you further faster. And that's one thing I want to challenge you to do. Just because you are serving a certain population does not mean those are the rooms you stay in, because oftentimes the populations that we are serving are not the folks that are going to take the nonprofit to the next step. And it's okay to surround yourself with individuals that are not the ones that you want to serve, because you also have a role to play as the leader of the nonprofit, and your role is to grow that nonprofit organization. And you need to be in rooms with philanthropists. I hate that word, but philanthropists, right? You need to be in rooms where you're talking to individuals that can support your mission. And oftentimes that support comes in the form of financial support, also time support, like volunteers and stuff like that. But you need to be in those rooms. So you need to surround yourself with somebody that will challenge you to think bigger. And that's what I want you to start looking at. Now, like always, I'm always going to share some actionable advice that you can take today. So what I want you to do when you have no one to turn to is to talk and think strategy. Okay. Now, the one thing about strategy is it helps you focus, like laser focus on what you need to accomplish in your organization. And as a leader, strategy is of the utmost importance, because when you do not have that, what happens is you start spiraling, and we're not doing that. Okay, we're not doing that, and we need to focus on what matters. Now, step one of what things you can do today, I want you to start building a trusted circle. It will take time. It does not happen overnight. It's not like you go on Bumble or Hinge and just find somebody connect and like, it's not like the dating world, like where you just find people. Like, no, you have to put yourself out there and start meeting people like in different environments and start having conversations so you can understand who to trust and start building that trusted circle. And being in rooms where actual conversations, real conversations, and not just surface level conversations are happening, but high level conversations. Okay. And when building that trusted circle, you're going to need at least 1 to 2 people who understand the nonprofit world, right? And they're not afraid to challenge your thinking. Now, this is not going to be your best friend. It's not going to be your spouse. This is going to be someone who gets the real pressure of delivering impact with limited time and money. So you need to put yourself in spaces where, let's say, the local government or nonprofit philanthropists or like foundations are going to be in. because then these are the rooms you need to be in so you can start building that trusted circle. And other ways you can do that, you can join a mastermind, a leadership cohort. You can get in a room that has other executive directors. So see if there's like a nonprofit summit happening. Stop hiding behind your busy schedule, because that's the other thing. We're addicted to being busy. Stop hiding behind your busy schedule and make peer support a priority. Okay, so that was step one. Step two, I want you to start replacing reaction with strategy. Now, when you're isolated, you default to reacting. Now, that is the default for a lot of individuals because, like, let's think about it. Someone quits, you panic. A grant doesn't come in, you start spiraling. Oh my God, how am I gonna pay Jane this month? How am I gonna pay Suzanne? Like, you start thinking about all the worst case scenario. You start spiraling down a rabbit hole and start losing your focus, right? Or a board member throws shade in the meeting and tells you you ain't doing your job. You start losing momentum because then you start internalizing this whole problem and start thinking about how this board member messed with your face. And now you start losing the momentum you're actually making in your nonprofit and you start freaking out, right? But when you have the space to start planning with support, you stop reacting and start anticipating. Now, I'm not sure if you caught the live yesterday on cash flow confusion, where I gave you actionable steps to take as well. I want you to go back to that video and start taking the steps to build your cash flow spreadsheet, because this is the second part. I want you to make the space to plan with support. Stop reacting, start anticipating. Anticipating cash flow projections will help you with that. And also, that's where the strategy sessions that I offer to my clients come in, right? They don't just come and vent, because we're not doing that. It's all about mapping out revenue plans, board engagement strategies, and donor systems that actually work, because I want my clients and all of them leave those sessions with clear ideas of what to do and what to implement, not just hope. Because, like, why are you leaving a strategy session or anything you're doing in life with hope? No, you need to know what actions you're going to take, because you can't just go through life just hoping. Okay, because then you can't just hope, oh, I hope I wake up and can brush my teeth tomorrow. No, you go and buy a toothbrush and toothpaste and brush your teeth tomorrow. Okay, all right. So do you see what I'm saying? So you have to leave, you have to be very clear and very strategic in how you're acting. So I want you to replace reaction with strategy. And step three, I want you to start leading with vulnerability and not perfection, because you have to stop thinking that you have all the answers as a nonprofit executive, right? And ask better questions. Oh my God, there was a book. It's on my phone and I'm on Instagram right now. There was a book, I forgot who the author was, but how to ask better questions. I think it's the guy, Maxwell. There was a book he has on how to ask better questions. I think it was him, but definitely you should read that book. I am all about reading books on leadership, especially if you're an executive director, and mindset, so you can start expanding your mind and start thinking differently, because that will help put you in a place where you start calming your nervous system down a little bit and realizing that, okay, I have a title, but I have not been leading in the way that I want to lead. So start asking better questions, and you can't pretend to be a know-it-all. Okay? Can't pretend to be a know-it-all. So being vulnerable with your team or board when done with boundaries invites collaboration. So what that looks like. So if you go to a board meeting, right? And you are talking about the vision of the organization, and everybody's having a discussion of where they want the organization to be in 3 to 5 years, right? Everybody's talking about it, and everybody's talking about, like, what's the plan to get there? You can be honest and say, I am not sure of how we can plan this effectively, but I think we need a professional to come help us with this, because I don't know how to do it. Does anybody else know how to do it? If nobody knows how to do it, hire a consultant. Because then now what you guys are doing is just looking at your tail, like, I'm afraid to fall off the stool, right? So it's basically everybody's looking back and pretending they know how to do it, and just like you guys go around in circles and circles and circles and nothing ever gets done. Okay, because then I worked with a founder who had been running her organization solo for 4 years, right? She never told the board she was burnt out. When I say burnt out, doing everything by herself. She just kept showing up, hoping they'd see she was drowning and tired, right? But I'm gonna tell you something. When you're doing everything by your lonesome, not saying I can't do this, I'm tired. Do you think anybody cares? I think everybody has so much going on in their lives. They're just like, oh, she can do it. I don't need to do it. Do you remember group projects back in high school? How one person carried the weight of the entire group? That's what you're doing. You think they're gonna want to like let go of their free time because you decided you were going to do everything and keep in your heart that you were drowning. No. Okay. So what happened with this client? We worked together and I helped her facilitate a conversation with her board, right? About leadership fatigue and the need for her to get operational support, right? So the board was not able to support in the way that she needed to. So they ended up having to raise funds to hire a part-time COO to increase board engagement because she stopped trying to be the strong one. And that's the thing I want you to realize. Like, we're not super person. You're not superwoman, you're not superman, you're not super person. And you have to be very clear on what your capacity is and what you can do, or not, you're going to end up burning out. So I want you to take step 3 to heart and start leading with vulnerability and not perfection. Be open to having these conversations with your board members and other leadership team about how much you have on your plate and how you need the support to see how they can tap in and say, okay, I got this. Because if you don't share it, nobody's going to know. Okay, nobody's going to know if you don't tell them. So that's the one thing I want you to like keep on top of your mind. Now, I'm going to go back and like what the 3 different actionable steps that I gave you. So 1 is to build a trusted circle. 2, replace reaction with strategy. And 3, lead with vulnerability and not perfection. Now, one thing you might be tempted to do is follow the advice of everyone out there when they tell you, oh, push through, just rest, take a break. I should have been in drama, but I wasn't. Okay, I'm very dramatic. Don't mind me. So, but when people are telling you that, don't listen, okay? Because it's not about pushing through or just resting or taking a break. Like, if you have to work and every time you feel burnt out to the point that it's either you push through or it doesn't get done. Because what happens, you might have a day where you just push through. Because then I'm going to tell you something right now that I learned a few years, well, I learned that a long time ago. I keep pushing through and keep pushing myself to the limit. One day I'm going to be unalive because I'm so stressed out and worked out that they're going to lose me, period. And guess what's going to happen? Either the organization's going to dissolve or they're going to get somebody else, right? So I want you to keep that on top of your mind. You have to start thinking about how you are functioning as a leader and taking care of yourself and lead from that. Because just rest, just taking a break, and just pushing through might not solve the whole burnout issue. Okay? Breaks don't solve burnout. Resting won't solve burnout because if it's happening on a consistent basis, it's not going to solve it. Strategy is going to help you solve that. Okay? And leadership isolation is not about needing a vacation every quarter or everything. It's about needing clarity. Because then if you have clarity, you have a strategy in mind, like you know exactly what you need to be doing. Because I'll give you an example of my personal experience. Because like when I was the project director of the organization I was last working with, I realized I need a break every 3 months because I had to figure out what my capacity was. And that was really important because if I did not understand, um, because it's a lot of work. Everything was in a calendar for me and everything was in a schedule. There was a plan that I followed. But I understood that I needed to disconnect every 3 months because not only did I have my business, I also had that role and also I was doing other things. So I knew that was my limit. So you have to do a personal audit as well to understand what your break breaking point is. So you can like build a strategy around that as well. So build a strategy not only for the organization and its growth, but also for yourself. And that's going to be my personal advice on that. You have to build a strategy and personally audit your own life to understand what your capacity is. Because then, yes, I help organizations with capacity building, but as a leader, I want you to understand you also have your capacity as a leader. Okay. So you need clarity and you need to get out of your head and into a space where someone can see what you cannot see. Because sometimes there are some things happening within the organization. You're so close to it, you can't see it, but someone else, like that's maybe not in the position you're in, can see exactly what's happening, but they're afraid to say anything. A lot of times people are afraid to speak up. That's okay. And if you keep waiting for the right time to get help, let me tell you something. You're going to keep on waiting. You'll always be waiting. And just like, oh no, I need the perfect time to start my business. I have the kids right now. I can't do it. The kids go to school. Oh my God, I'm so lonely. I need to get a dog. Oh my God, the dog is like keeps me so busy. I can't start my business. If you keep waiting, you're going to keep on waiting because what happens is that you keep telling yourself excuses and you start believing them. So every time the time comes, it makes sense to make another excuse. So I want you to stop waiting for the quote unquote right time that's never going to come to get the help that you need. You know you need help, go look for it. Go get it. Okay? Because you don't want to be waiting perpetually. And successful nonprofits don't just grow because their leaders know everything. They're able to grow because their leaders ask for help and make strategic decisions. Because one thing I'm going to tell you for sure, not every leader knows everything about the organization. They're knowledgeable enough to seek help in areas they're not strong in. Let me say that again. Strong leaders, they ask for help because they understand what their limitations are and ask for help in areas they're not strong in. So, if you know that building relationships is not your thing, maybe you need to find somebody else for the role. Because as the executive director, as a leader of a nonprofit, it won't be your job to build these relationships and bring that money in, bring that revenue in for that nonprofit. If you want to make sure that Johnny got a job next week. Okay. So I'm gonna need you to get out of your head and make hard decisions because that's what leadership requires, especially if you want to embody the role of a leader, not just call yourself a leader. Because we talked about this at the beginning, a lot of people are calling themselves leaders because they have fancy titles and they think they are, but you need to go read some books on leadership and not books. I don't have John Maxwell here. They're on my Audible, but read some books by John Maxwell. I think that's his name. They're all on my Audible. So and then there is a book about asking better questions. Definitely look at that one too. Because then as a leader, you need to start asking better questions. Because then just sitting there and not being able to have a conversation or ask questions that are relevant or that help you get to the next step, it's a detriment to you. So if you're tired of leading alone, one thing you can do today before I head out, it's 11:37. I've been like running my mouth for quite some time. Book a 90-minute strategy session with me. This is your space to impact what's not working and build a roadmap that's going to make your growth possible, not just hypothetical. I'm going to put the link in the comments on Facebook. If you're on Instagram, you can check the link in my bio. The strategy session's actually on there. And let's talk. There are so many ways that you can get ahead and start being intentional about the work that you do. And I'm all about intentionality. So definitely reach out in the DMs as well if you want to have a conversation to see what the next best step is for you if you're not sure about the strategy session. And then we'll go from there. Hi, Simeon. How are you doing? But definitely let me know if you have any questions. I'm gonna head out and go find some food. Bye, y'all.